Hi all, thanks for joining us. I'm Michael, and we're going to be playing some music for you today, all on Zoom and Cleanfeed. Everyone here is in different places, so we've got our little names here. Simon is in Morris, Zack is in Duluth, Melanie's in Winona, Maia is in St. Cloud, Craig's in Fergus Falls, and Mandy is also here in Minneapolis with me, just across the wall. So yeah, we'll play some music together. Feel free to say hi in the chat, comment on things. We'll have a Q&A at the end, so if you drop in your questions while we're playing, that's great, and we'll check in on those at the end. And let me know if anything is sounding. If things aren't sounding great, you can let me know in the chat, and I'll try to maneuver that a little bit. I'll be mixing it as we go along. But yeah, thanks so much all for being here, and we'll hop right into this first piece with Zack, if you want to take it away. So the tricky thing about live remote music is that we're all in these different places. We're just connected over the internet. We use Cleanfeed for the audio just because it's a lot clearer than Zoom. And it's just a website you can go to and connect with each other. And the trickiest thing is the lag that's involved. So we're about like a second behind each other, half second behind each other. So there's a lot of flexible notation that we use here, a lot of improvisation. So when I say I compose these things, I kind of just created the structures that everyone gets to kind of pour their music into. So just to demonstrate a little bit, the tricky part about Cleanfeed, Mandy, if you could just play some slow, steady quarter notes, and then after a second, if you all try to hop on, just to show that we can't quite do that, even if we wanted to.
All right.
So that's as close as we can get, and it's not a steady lag either, it's variable, so we can't even try to build something in that way. So it's just a lot of flexibility in the music, which is fun. It just kind of invites, like I said, a lot of improvisation, which is a fun kind of world to work in. If you have any questions about that, feel free to type them in the chat. We'll get to that at the end. So we'll move on to the next piece, which I'm calling Cygnus the Swan, and the working title is 29 Cycles. And yeah, you can go ahead and take it away, Zack, when you're ready. So the next piece is, well, the next two pieces. The first one is called Star Trail. And we've just been calling it chain ostinato improv. So if you don't know what a star trail is, it's when somebody takes a kind of open exposure photo of stars so that as the Earth rotates, it seems like the stars are creating these big, huge concentric circles. So go ahead and Google star trail, take a look at one of those. They're beautiful. So in this piece, what people are going to do is improvise one after the other with some kind of guidelines. And it'll be kind of like brickwork. So the first person will go, the second person, third person, fourth person, and then on and on. So if you look at that star trail, it's kind of these concentric circle brickworks kind of layered against each other. So that's the idea of this next piece. And then following that, without me interrupting in the middle, will be a piece that Zack will lead off of. That I was, the working title again was New Rec 466. We had a lot of kind of funny working titles, but the official title will be Vela the Sail. A constellation. Yeah, so we'll hop right into that with Star Trail. That was Vela the Sail, which named thusly for the constellation theme, and also just kind of like the feeling of wind, water, motion, kind of sailing along. So the theme, Constellations, title of the concert, is derived mostly from the fact that we're our own little constellation here, spread across Minnesota, and that's indicative. Like it's represented in the cover art that Joey Barrett has done. Very nice art. You should check out her website. You can find it in the description below. Yeah, so we're Constellation here, just the stars among the millions here, finding our little connections to each other and putting together our little music stories. So this next piece is titled Constellations, and it is inspired by a bortle scale image. So the bortle scale is something that ranks kind of how the sky looks at night in a place. So ranging from like in the middle of a big city, going to the suburbs, kind of out there, out somewhere you would camp, and then like out into a dark sky park kind of place. So in this piece, we'll kind of progress through those different kind of bortle scale locations, starting with just seeing like one or two little stars in the sky, like one over here, one over there, disconnected little points. And then by the end of the piece, the sky will be full of stars. And then following that, we'll have another star trail with different instructions given to the performers. So constellations and then star trail. And last, we have a piece called G Cloud, working title. And before we get to that, just some thank yous. So thank you again to Jody Barrett for making the cover art for Constellations. Thank you to the Minnesota State Arts Board for funding this project. This is a Creative Support for Individuals grant that's supporting this project. So thank you to the Minnesota State Arts Board, and thank you to the voters of Minnesota for making that funding possible. It lets us do a lot of cool things here. And thank you to the musicians for jumping on this project. This is a really kind of unique thing to ask people to do, and unique thing to participate in. So thank you all for being part of this. And thank you, the audience, for being here, participating in the chat. Thank you. And stick around for the Q&A after. So we'll stay here just as you see us on Zoom and Cleanfeed. And you can type your questions, and there's a short delay between when you hear us and when I'll see your question, but type in your question or comment for any of us, for me, for any of the musicians. So stick around for that. We'll do that just after this next piece. And I feel like there's one more thing. If I remember, I'll say it after, so stick around for that too. But we'll hop into this next piece here in just a moment. And thank you all for being here. All right. Let's hear it for those musicians. Yeah. You're all clapping too. Thanks. Yeah, wonderful, wonderful stuff. Thanks all musicians for being a part of it. So Q&A, here we are, ready for Q&A. So go ahead and drop your questions in the chat, comments, things you want us to talk about. We'll be here for a little bit. I'll scroll through and look at the previous chat, see what's up there. In the meantime, musicians, if you have any questions for me or for each other, feel free to ask those as well. Let's see what we got. Maggie
I have a question.
Oh yeah, go on.
Oh,
go on.
No, go ahead.
Maggie asked, with the lag, does that mean the pieces sound different each time you play it? Yeah, that's kind of built in to the way that I had to write it and that we had to put it together here. So the lag does make it different every time. So we have to create structures that allow us to be different every time. So a lot of what you heard just then was improvisation. So like Mandy, that whole last time was just kind of playing in a style that we had talked about, but just kind of going on top of what else was in there. The performers just had little. Well, I'll drop the sheet music in the description at some point, so you can all look at that at your leisure instead of me trying to describe it. But yeah, so we had to make the pieces different every time. Absolutely. What was your question, Craig?
Oh, my question was for Zack, and mostly just if you could walk us through your setup there, because the rest of us, I think, is pretty straightforward what we're doing, but it's there's a little more mystery in what Zack is doing.
Before we get to Zack, yeah, I'll just say what everyone's playing. Or actually, if you just want to one by one, I'll point you out and you play a little bit on your instrument.
Oh.
My Aunt Barbara was asking about that. So Simon, if you play a little bit on your clarinet. And Melanie, if you could play a little bit on sax. Sorry, you might have put away your instruments. Melanie, if you could play a little bit on the saxophone.
Yeah, any saxophonists in the room, I actually am sneakily on a kind of a jazz setup, and so I try to fade in and out. I try not to be too jazzy, but...
And that's specifically tenor saxophone.
Oh yeah, tenor saxophone.
And Maia, if you could play a little on your bassoon. And Mandy, if you could play a little bit on your violin. They were also playing viola on one piece, but you don't have to get the viola. And Craig, if you could play a little bit on your bass. And bass has got a lot of names. I like to call it a double bass, but contrabass, stand-up bass, string bass. Do you call it anything in particular, Craig?
Yeah.
Or just don't call it late for dinner.
Just don't call it late for dinner. Yeah.
Let's see what else we got. Oh, my chat just went funny. All right, we got a question. Do you write the motifs that the instrumentalists use as a basis for their improvisation? Sometimes. So on that last piece, I didn't give them any motifs or kind of themes or anything to work with or any material. So Mandy, I didn't give any material to on that last one. One that I did give material for was the second piece, working title 29 cycles, title Cygnus the Swan. That's one I'm actually pretty interested in the way that composition went, the the route that it took for me to compose that and for us to work on it. So I did give little prompts at the beginning of sections to Melanie to kind of put Melanie in the sound world I was thinking. And then after that, I would just give a pitch set, a specific set of pitches for Melanie to work with, and a specific range to play in. And then at the end, there's specific written out material, but temporally free, so Melanie could play it kind of as fast or slow as she wanted. And that one, I'm really interested in that one. So again, I'll drop all these in the chat or in the description later, so you can look at them. But that was one where I gave more themes, and that was an interesting style of composition to me, kind of halfway. But a lot of them now, people were just kind of doing their thing. So for example, New Rec 4, or Vela the Sail is the official title, working title. New Rec 466, that was the fourth piece. Zack had an entirely written out part, and then everyone else had kind of amorphous parts of just specific pitches they could play, or the instruction there was just to play kind of in scales. So without leaping around, but just in scales was an instruction that I gave there, and gave a specific scale to them to play in. Another
One
question
thing that
from, oh yeah.
was kind of neat about it was we had like numbers, like rehearsal numbers, and then what we figured out was for Michael to just type like 1 in the chat, and then we would get a little thing that went boop, and then we would see like 1. Okay, so that means we're here now, like we're going to do this part.
So about half the pieces I was queuing kind of secretly in the chat. So one thing I like about this setup is that Cleanfeed, you're hearing exactly what the musicians are hearing. We don't have any personal mixes. So you're hearing exactly what all the musicians are hearing. Same for Zoom. We don't have anything else except the chat. So that's a fun little thing. I just got to cue them in the chat. Just 1, 2, 3. So previous times I've done this, we've like held up fingers 1, 2. But it turns out the chat, really easy to catch that. It just pops up. So that was a good find this time around. I've done this twice before with Lyra Voices and with 10th Wave. So this is the third kind of live remote concert. So I'm figuring out the little tricks. Got a question from Ben. Oh, so I know you've done similar asynchronous works before. Have you learned from those previous works that helped with this performance? So yeah, so those were the previous ones. Things I learned is a lot of the tech stuff. So just like figuring out how to push the buttons, right? Get the live stream set up right, what the bit rate and stuff should be. So stuff like that, but it developed a lot. This one included a lot more improvisation. So not so much that I learned from it, but just trying out different things each time. Trying out more improvisation in this iteration was a lot of fun, figuring out how that would go. What else I learned? Yeah, learned a lot every time. If I think more on that, I'll let you know what else I've learned. Curious about the musicians' experiences as they're playing. Bridget Maiorana asks, my mom asks. So yeah, what are your experiences as you're playing? I guess like as I'm cueing things, if you're like, there's the number. If it's like startling, or yeah, if you can speak to any of your experiences playing.
Yeah, I can go. I know that there was, in the rehearsal process, there was a lot of really wonderful back and forth between how, from Michael, how do I write this so that it makes the most sense to what we were all trying to accomplish? And we found a really good system. And so by the time we were performing it this evening, I think it felt really seamless to me personally. And a little side note, it's such a privilege to be able to perform, and a little intimidating, but Michael's such a nice guy, to perform with the composer right there in the room, kind of giving feedback and encouraging. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I would say it's more about, well, not more, but for me it was about responding, looking at the screen, responding, just in an intuitive way as a musician, and bringing something to the table that perhaps people heard or perhaps people responded to.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think what I liked about it is all this music, it's in the way that we have to do it. It's really like listening focused. So while you're anticipating all these like cues in the chat, more than that, I find myself just really zoned in on what everybody else is doing, more than if we were like playing all together with the conductor and watching a conductor or something. And so I think it's special because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and my experience with it is it's been great to work with all these performers. Some of them new to me for this project. So it's just been a lot of fun, and they were very flexible with me getting the music to them quite late. That's something I didn't learn from last couple times. I just got the music to them kind of hot off the presses, and it worked out great. Everyone's very flexible. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you guys. One thing in the specific notation was like how to communicate. So this is something I learned from last time I was thinking on it, is how to communicate how material should be repeated, how often it should be repeated, in what way it should be repeated, how kind of malleable material is. So working with notation, like taking the stems off of note heads, the specific spacing of those note heads, working with box notation to imply something should be repeated flexibly, and then working with other kinds of notation to imply something, a more rigid kind of repeat, just working with repeat signs. So getting the notation really precise to communicate kind of flexible meanings was kind of at odds with each other. And that's something I've been learning each time I do this, getting a little bit clearer in my notation each time. What other questions have we got? So how do you rehearse these pieces? So this is just like we do here on Zoom and Cleanfeed. I would bring new pieces. So each rehearsal, I think we did 3 rehearsals and a workshop or 2. And then I had one-on-one meetings with everyone. So one-on-one meeting to kind of get the tech all set up and try out some fragments together. And then do workshops, because a lot of this was very flexible notation that we had to kind of figure out together. And Melanie spoke to that a little bit. That I had to be in all of the rehearsals. I had to be right there kind of saying like, oh, this works, this doesn't, like, can we try this way? Just because and with the improvisation, everything being so different every time, I had to be there to kind of help shape it. I guess I didn't have to, but I was there to help shape it. So that's kind of how the rehearsals went. What else we got? Do y'all tune together? Yes. I forgot to prompt that first couple times, I think, but then we tuned twice before this performance. So, yeah. So we tuned to the synth. Synth just put out an A, and we tuned to that.
Michael,
and then playing, oh yeah, Simon.
Yeah, just to go back to the beginning, what inspired you to create this sort of music, and is it part of your usual style?
So it was a pandemic thing mostly. I received a KCF Create grant at the beginning of 2020 and had all these ideas of what to do. And then pandemic started, so I had to figure out how to pivot from there. And a lot of people were kind of figuring this stuff out in April and May in 2020. C4, a choir out in New York, was doing cool work in this space. So I tried that out with the Lyra Voices and really enjoyed it. So I hadn't worked too much with semi-notated, semi-improvisational music before that. So that was a totally different way of working for me. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I have been incorporating it a little bit more into my kind of concert music performed in person. Can you all speak to playing in tune? So we tune with each other, but like, how is it to play like in tune on this kind of setup, different from playing in person?
I don't know if it's much different, actually. I'm still listening around, and stuff where the kind of fun thing though is that it is aleatoric and semi-improvisatory, so you can take it in a really consonant or a dissonant direction. But I'd say for the most part that I'm listening just about the same as I would if we all were in the concert hall together.
Nice.
I'd agree. It's pretty similar, except for the spatial part of it. I'm used to being able to like listen to the bass over there, but everybody is right here.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that too much. Another question, how does a virtual concert compare to in person? Do you prepare it in the same way? Anything that's harder, easier, from Madeline? So that's kind of goes along with some things we've said. Anything to add to that, you all? How does it compare to in person? Anything that's harder, easier in this space?
Just like the tech stuff is like
Cables, microphones.
Yeah, getting everything plugged into the right stuff.
Yeah.
Does my internet work?
Yeah.
That's the only thing that feels different besides the fact that I'm by myself in my house.
Yeah. One thing I always think is funny about Zoom calls in general, and also these rehearsals and performances, usually you get to like mill in and mill out and like hang out kind of before and after. But you lose like just that social aspect. So sometimes after rehearsal, they'd say like, hey, anyone, we just want to hang out on the call for a minute after, just kind of as we're milling around in the imaginary space here. So that was something different, social aspect before and after rehearsal.
Yeah,
I
that
felt
sense
like.
oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say I had to remind myself to like look at the video sometimes, and I like somebody else had said earlier it was more like listening focused than looking. I guess that's a big difference. Like you can look at the video, but I don't know, it's less connection visually than when in person, I feel like.
I was going to say it's the sense of atmosphere is different. It's not the same as being in a concert hall. You're in your room. So although atmosphere is created through the music, it's a different. Doesn't have that visceral effect of being in a room with others.
Yeah, and the sound is going to be compressed to some degree, so you lose some element of the overtones, just like those extra little bits on top. So that's an element too. But yeah, I find it. So this kind of ties into the next question here. Where do you all meet each other? A lot of us wouldn't play together if we didn't have something like this to kind of tie us all together, which is neat. So I know Zack from working at the Minnesota Orchestra together there in the ticket office, and we've collaborated on a lot of music things over the years. Since then, Mandy's my partner, so we know each other, and we do a lot of music things together as well. Maia, if you want to speak to how we know each other through the Film Score Fest and the House Leader program. If you want to talk about your House Leader stuff real quick, I just really enjoy it. I think it's really cool. And we know each other through that a bit.
Yeah, I think we initially met through Film Score Fest, which is an event where an orchestra plays live scores while films are being screened, and they're all new projects. But Mikey's the orchestra, I don't know, what is your title?
Score
Manager?
editor, kind of.
Okay. But Mikey has also been a house leader in my elementary music classes. We have a house system that's similar to Harry Potter houses, except each house is led by a real-life musician who serves as a mentor to my students throughout the school year. So they send questions to him, and he sends his answers back. We've done video visits. You came and visited my classes a few times. Mandy has also been a house leader, but both just wonderful mentors for my students and brought so much knowledge and experience that I don't have to teach my students.
Yeah,
That was a really great experience to get to
make
see
little
someone
flags.
instrument.
They make little flags for the house leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So fun. Yeah, and then Craig, I was connected to through. It was a kind of string of connections that led me to Craig, and then Craig connected me with Simon. So that was the kind of like outer circle of being brought in and connected through this constellation network here. And then Melanie, I was a connection through, I think, Area Samura or Kurt Hattenberger are both recommended Melanie. Yeah, and really, really glad that they did. It's great to be connected with you all.
Super cool to play with all of you. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very, very neat.
Definitely the coolest part. Yeah, well, great. I might have missed a question in there. If I did, I'll answer it in the comment in the YouTube description, unless you can get it in real quick. But we'll go ahead and wrap up here. Unless there's any last thoughts from the musicians.
No, just thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for everyone who was watching.
Yeah. Thanks all for being here. And the last question, do you have cool house names? It's just our names, which is cool. So it's Maiorana House, Fassett House, which is fun. Yeah. Well, yeah, great. Thanks all for being here. We'll sign off.
All right.
Catch you next time.
See ya.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.